words are living things. Take for example the Portuguese word saudade. This is a difficult word to give a proper translation to. It describes a deep missing, a longing for something that one no longer has. It can be for a mother long past, one's country, family, anything that makes one stop with sorrow, even if briefly. It also describes the sorrow of missing something we once possessed and which, while we had it, we failed to appreciate or value, and so lost it. Saudade, such a tragic word, so full of loss, tears and regrets, all encapsulated in a brief sound. Sometimes the best way to understand a word is not just by looking it up in a dictionary. Sometimes music explains it best. A traditional Portuguese genre called fado, from which the Indonesian kroncong is derived, speaks of longing, lost love, and better times. A popular saying describes the nature of the music with these words, quote, "Fado can't be seen or heard. It simply happens," end quote. Traditionally, fado singers are obliged to wear black or deep burgundy, and their mournful words are accompanied by a regular guitar and by a second instrument called the Portuguese guitar. The history of this instrument is fascinating and would require a whole new episode to detail. But suffice to say here that it derived from the royal courts and may have been stolen by the troubadours, taken to the streets, and then it was transformed into the instrument of the common people. It became a symbol of the poor, the very poor in fact, a class of people creating their own identity using the instruments reserved for the rich. The question of where fado comes from cannot be answered. Scholars have tried to document its birth with varying degrees of success, producing a number of theories about the subject, none of which are fully convincing. One of these theories traces the origins of the style back to the traditional songs of the Arabic peoples that settled in Portugal during the Middle Ages. This theory, however, does not explain why fado only appeared in Portugal and not in the south of Spain, also populated by Arabic peoples around the same time period. Another theory says that fado derived from a certain musical form known as lundum, brought to Portugal by sailors who used to cultivate it during their long sea journeys. Indeed, Portugal has always been a seafaring country, and this origin would explain the tendency of sea-related themes in early fado lyrics. But this theory is not always consistent or convincing, and so it is not widely accepted. Other theories argue that fado goes back to the rich medieval traditions of troubadour love and satirical lyrics, themes that are still common in present-day fado. However, it could be argued that these are universal themes, and most importantly, fado did not take root in other parts of Spain that boasted medieval poetry traditions such as those of Portugal. One of the most appealing aspects of fado lies in the lyrics of its songs, in which the poetic elements become important. The best fado compositions are usually a perfect marriage of melody and lyrics, yet sometimes poetry rules over the music. The poetic universe of fado is dominated by the word saudade, a deeply nostalgic feeling of longing and yearning for love, for one's homeland, or for a past that will never come again. The question then remains, how did fado make it all the way to Indonesia, and how did it become kroncong? It all began in the 16th century, when sailors from the Portuguese Empire brought Portuguese instruments and music to Indonesia. Low-class citizens and gangs, commonly called buaya, adopted the new musical styles. Then it was eventually assimilated by the upper-class citizens. The small kroncong guitar, also the name of the music, is derived from the Portuguese braguinha, a small string guitar which was usually played by the very poor in Lisbon. Kroncong music is believed to have originated in the communities of freed Portuguese slaves in the 16th century. European influence from this time can also be heard in the music of the Batak people of North Sumatra. From the end of the 19th century, the beginnings of guitar accompaniment formed a distinct sound from Sumatra, Sulawesi, and elsewhere. In the late 1800s, Comedy Stamboel, an Indonesian touring comedy company that performed folk entertainment and which became very popular in East Java, performed tales from 1001 Nights, European folk tales, and local tales such as Alibaba and even Cinderella. They toured by railway and ship to Malaysia and all over Indonesia. They developed a kroncong music style called stamboel, and it was said they could copy Portuguese fado so well that Portuguese merchants who heard them told of how they sounded like the singers back home in Portugal. Kroncong music continues today. The pop music industry has not yet produced popular kroncong, but some groups have been experimenting with it. The Bandung-based group Kroncong Merah Putih has experimented with elements of rap combined with kroncong music in the background. Bondan Prakoso has fused kroncong and hip-hop with his group, Bondan Prakoso and Fade to Black.